This is Cade Courtley, former Navy SEAL, sniper, and platoon commander. I've seen what happens when the lights go out, and after Hurricane Helene left 4 million Americans in the dark for days, I'm giving you the same advice I give my own family. Get backup power now. So to celebrate July 4th, get the best-selling Patriot Power Generator, 2200X with a free mini generator to charge your smaller devices. That's double the solar power, absolutely free. Because as a SEAL, I learned 2 is 1 and 1 is none. You'll recharge twice as fast for true power independence. This generator will run your fridge, charge every phone in your house, keep critical medical devices alive, all without a drop of gas or deadly fumes. Get $100 off if you're a senior or veteran like me, and take a full year to pay. Why such a crazy deal? Because July 4th is our holiday and you deserve it. This sale ends July 7th. Go to 4patriots.com. That's the number 4, patriots.com. Don't wait, get peace of mind.
Listeners of the Randomness of Nothing podcast, this is your host, Rashad Woods. We venture into business, creatives, creators, and innovative people across all walks of life. And this person here who I have a chance to interview, I'm very honored to because of the fantasy novels and the playwriting that he does. He's a very good author, actor, and creator, Addam Ledamyen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor and a pleasure. And obviously we met through your very good representative, Erin Flynn. I want to give her a shout out, for allowing us to connect. Addam, please tell me about yourself.
Thank you. Yeah. So my name is Addam Ledamyen. And as you said, I am an actor, a playwright, and a novelist. And I'm the artistic director for Elenvia Publications and Productions, with whom we've published our debut, which is also my debut novel.
What is that writing process like? Because I've talked to several different authors, right? And I think everybody gets in their mind that they can write a book. At least I've tried to take a stab at it. And then when you actually have to start like putting pen to paper, man, it's a difficult process. You're like, oh my gosh, this is brutal.
Absolutely. And I will say also, I came at it through a couple of different stages, right? So I started creatively as an actor, and that translated pretty well into starting to be a playwright because I had some of that, work with dialogue and whatnot.
Sure.
And then taking that leap to novels was definitely hard. They're longer.
For sure.
It's just a lot of words. And the biggest thing that ultimately allowed me to finish was just not giving up. I went back and found the very first draft from I guess about 6 or 7 years ago now, and it's bad.
Yeah, but so you cringed, didn't you? You cringed, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's so funny, when I first look at, and I'm never going to call myself a great podcast host, but I look at my first, episode hosting, and you're like, ooh, you're like, yeesh, it's nerve wracking, man. And then the problem is you get tunnel vision because you think what you're doing, oh man, this has to be good because I'm passionate about this and that. And then next you're like, yo, man, this is really not that good at all.
The greatest thing that opened my eyes was, getting out of that tunnel vision a bit and reading other books. And especially The Legend of Leanna Page is written in this kind of old classical style.
Yes.
And I started reading books from the time period that I was emulating.
Yeah.
And I realized oh, wow, this sounds so much better than my prose.
Yeah.
And, I was able to start not copying anything, but learning from their tools and being able to emulate that.
Well, I think it's so fascinating because when you look at anybody who's in fantasy is a child of Tolkien, right? Even the most acclaimed things, your Game of Thrones or even the Legend of Zelda, you can do a completely different story, but just that encompassing area is like a sci-fi film is somehow is influenced by Star Wars or by 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even if you didn't, you're like, hey man, I'm in space. They're like, okay, well, it's just in a related field. So Having said all that, I think how do you navigate telling an original story without copycatting somebody who inspired you?
Yeah. The thing that I think is especially important is, honestly, I think not to worry as much about being original, so to say, because especially with working within kind of the realm of legends, the beautiful thing about myths and legends is that there are things that are similar between them. Going before Tolkien or anything, just going to the original myths of any culture or fairy tales.
Viking culture, yeah, exactly, right.
There are these types of stories and these types of characters that show up, whether people have heard of them or not. There's just something about the human psyche that there's similarities between the stories we tell. And I think that's really cool and beautiful. So I think it becomes more about not avoiding it, but recognizing when you're doing it and appreciating it, and finding where your specific perspective is going to tell a new layer of the story.
Yeah, I think it gets, and then, it's like when, you're playing musical notes, right? I can't play an instrument to save my life, but it's like, you can still, I think in music, I hate to get this wrong for people who are musicians, what are there, like 12 different notes? There's only like a certain number of given notes in music to play. Yeah. So inevitably, humans have existed for thousands of years. There's going to be people who play, it's how you play the note, right? It's how, and I think that, the Legend of Leanna Page, which we'll get into some details with, people are always wanting to explore different avenues. And as long as it comes across and it resonates with your audience or your reader, I think they can put those preconceptions to the side, because Tolkien pulled from people, right? Like you said, there's Odin, there's Greek mythology, there's Roman mythology, there's ancient Persian culture. There are things that existed before these books that were in people's libraries that maybe were even passed along as stories that you have to explore it to really know about.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wonderful. So when you first got in, what made you transition from acting to writing?
I had stories to tell. There were, it's really as simple as that. There were, I was always one of those kids that was, doing a lot of daydreaming, or if I was alone, then fully just acting out. Yeah. A lot of times as a kid, I'd be acting out scenes from movies or kind of the fan fiction version of that, where I would interact with character or whatever. And then it would go from things like that to acting out stories that didn't have to do with characters from that I'd seen in other things. And eventually there were just things that I needed to write down. And the more that I grew up and realized that like that was a cool thing, and that it wasn't just not only stories, but there were ideas that I needed to get into stories that I wanted to share with people. I had to be a writer who
it's like that spark and that fire that's inside of you, right? And then even to a degree, you'll be like, as much as you admire the work or something, you'd be like, man, they didn't tell this. There's in the realm or in the storylining. It's like when I started my show, I listen to podcasts, but I don't over listen, right? Because I still want to kind of do my own thing. So, but I'm like, I think in the space of where people are screaming at each other, or there's this and there's that going on, I'm like, man, what if I just ask people what they do? Because I like movies, I like martial arts, I like when people say they started a business or they dove into this thing that maybe hasn't been explored, because there are more things available than just what the world has to offer to you, right? And you have to go out and you have to seek the people that are doing it. And then that keeps your mind spinning. Like when I think of this Leanna Page, I think of like, Lion Witch in the Wardrobe kind of a thing, right? Like when I was a kid and all I had was the book in front of me, or even like these older movies like Never Ending Story kind of a thing, where your mind can just be transported away from anything else you're thinking about. And you're like, how did that person make it?
Yeah. And it's a really exciting thing to be able to have these worlds and to share them with people.
This is your first novel, if I could ask?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is it officially released? And like, what can you give a background of the story for the people who are listening to this episode about what this book is all about, please?
Absolutely. So The Legend of Leanna Page is I call it a philosophically grounded fantasy novel that is set in this mythic world called the World Within the Woods. And it follows this servant girl named Leanna Page, who has these kind of mystical powers that make her a threat to the royals that she serves. Her parents are two servants from opposite kingdoms. And then in addition to that, she has a very strong relationship and connection with the fairies who live in the woods outside of her world. And because of that, she grows up with this just kind of natural understanding that everywhere is home and everyone is family. Right. And as she goes out into the world, she discovers that other people don't feel that way about anything. And so the more she grows up and speaks her mind about that and gets into trouble because of that, she gets into more and more danger, and eventually realizes that she has to kind of step out of her societally defined place in order to try and change the world if she's going to save the people that she loves.
That's wonderful. And I think of all the great, fantasy ones that, that I even like movies like Willow. And I think of, the people that are hiding in the forest, the self-doubt, the disbelief. I don't want to give away too much of the book. I haven't read it myself. I hope I can get a copy. Does she know about like her lineage or things like that? Or is there something like that you can tell about her background without spoiling too much about her, from the book itself?
Yeah, absolutely. She knows. She knows about her background, and specifically, without giving away too much, her parents are each the servants of royalty, and so they have some inside knowledge that they're like, they were just kind of in the background or whatnot. And in order to try and stay under the radar, her parents ask her to keep that a secret, but she does know all of it.
Okay.
And what I was particularly interested in with her is that she doesn't have she's not like a secret princess or anything.
That's what I was curious about. That's what I was curious about. Yeah.
I was interested in writing about this girl who doesn't have any remarkable background. Her family lineage, again, they're from two different kingdoms, but one is has been servants for generations, and one was merchants for a while, and then found their way into serving in the castle. But they're not remarkable people, as she chooses to be remarkable later. Right.
So when you're writing this, and you have to have, because I'm always are there visuals? Is it a standard book without visuals? Or is it just pure writing? I hate to ask if it's a picture book. I don't want to say that in a negative way. But is it something you have to picture in your background of where they're at, forest and buildings and things of that nature?
Yes. There's no illustrations.
How hard is that? How hard is that to write? Because you got to have all these locations that are in your mind while you're writing, and you're like, man, I got to really be detailed. Like, how does that process work?
Yeah, that was actually something I very specifically practiced. Like I said, coming from a playwriting background, my my experience is that that's not my job. That's the set designer's job. Figure that out later. I had to reorient myself and be like, no, I have to know that. And so I actually remember I was on a hike one time, and I brought a notebook with me, and I decided to practice making language pictures, I called them. I would just take something that, some moment that I saw on the hike, and instead of taking a picture of it, I would try and describe it in my notebook.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
And it was really fun. And so then, moving into the fictional world, sometimes I did take, there are some images in, language images in the book that are just directly describing some particular nature that I've seen, and others, of course, are made up. But that exercise was really helpful for that.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I say this very respectfully. Like, if you're in the woods and you're in nature, that's immediately a direct correlation to the fantasy portion of a lot of things, right? Because there's a lot of forestry that's out there available, and there's a lot of stories and fables that can come with that. So, and it's been like that since the dawn of time. So I'm not, in any way taking shots at you, but it's like, wow, this is out here. This is really a cool spot where, something dramatic could be happening, something tragic could be happening, or maybe just a quiet moment with herself and her own thoughts, because that's what, the environment can provide for you. Do you plan on having more than one book about this character?
Yes, there is a second book already written. We're in the process of editing now. So there will be a volume 2 at the very least.
How's the book been received so far?
Really, really nice. It's been really lovely to see. We've been getting excellent reviews. Kirkus Reviews called it an immersive and exciting adventure tale, well constructed. And we've gotten several 3 different 5-star reviews from readers' favorite reviewers, and
beautiful.
Just a lot of other reader commentary that's just been really, really lovely. And the most meaningful ones have been we put it up on NetGalley before in advance of publication, and there were a couple on there that individual readers that were just like really touched by it, and really, really cool to see.
It's always funny. Like it's funny, like when you watch like a movie, the critics, and I'm glad you have great reviews, but it's like, it's about what the fans think. It's about who, like, It really is. Like, it really, like, that's what matters the most. That, like, when you have an individual, it's like, man, I really enjoyed your book, because there's a lot of different places people can seek their entertainment and seek their free time and enjoyment. And the fact that they actually, that your book resonated with them, like, that's a special thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I felt that too. I was really, really touched by that.
That's awesome. I don't want to blow your head up, but where's the adaptation coming? When's the mini series, the the streaming platform, the movie, etc.?
Yeah, nothing planned immediately, but I would certainly love to see that happen. One of my reasons for writing this as a novel instead of, for example, a play, was again because it was this sort of, I wanted it to be this sort of legend. And so many of the legends that we have, have some original text that we look to in order to play off of it. And I wanted it to have that original text, which could then be made into anything. And I would be really excited to, whether I write that screenplay or someone else does, I would really love to see it in all sorts of different forms.
Did Leanna Page come from anybody, like, in your circle, somebody you knew growing up, or did you just basically, like, bring the character from scratch?
Yeah, no, if anybody, she's probably, at heart a little bit me, but just as far as where I was writing from, but her initial inspiration wasn't anything in life. It was a kind of remarkable moment for me. I was reading some other book. I was reading Dracula by Bram Stoker, which has nothing to do with the Legend of Leanna Page. But I happened to be reading that, and in it he references this old story that just kind of reminded one of the characters of the environment she was in, and I didn't know what he was talking about, and it was such a brief allusion and so non-specific. But I just kind of wanted to keep reading, so I tried to just kind of context clue it in my head. And within like a second, I had this whole legend in my head. Awesome. And for a moment, I wasn't sure whether I remembered it or made it up. So like I stopped reading. I looked up what he was alluding to, and it was some other thing. Right. It wasn't that, again, it's nothing like the Legend of Leanna Page.
Yeah.
And
no vampires in Leanna Page anytime soon, right?
No, they're not connected at all. But yeah, all of a sudden I was like, oh, cool. I guess I made this thing up, and I have to write it now. And the most complete aspect of that initial image that I had was Leanna and her journey and what she's like.
Listen, inspiration can come from when somebody's just sitting having a cup of coffee, and then they have that. I mean, so when you're reading Dracula, obviously something, and you're a very student of art history. So all it took was one particular passage in that book to be able to sit back and say, okay, this is where this can go in my mind. What fascinates me when I think of like this story of Leanna Page, right? And it's a servant girl balancing family and loyalty. It really, you can translate those times to modern life, right? Because, it's about somebody who may have something special, who comes from modest means, but there's always the next journey along the way. So what do you hope your readers take from this story?
The most important thing that I want people to come away with is this questioning or feeling that about what it takes for someone or something to be good. And what Leanna comes away learning is that in order for that to happen, someone has to believe in them. Someone, and even for yourself, in order for someone to be good, other people have to believe that they can. And I think that is applicable on very individual levels, but I also think it's applicable on a much more societal level. I think humanity, in a lot of ways, sucks. But if we...
Yeah, and I think one of the things is that when you deal with confidence and self-doubt and disbelief, and it can be lonely, it can be arduous, but there's also very beautiful things. And sometimes, by navigating those spaces, you can, whatever Leanna Page's, journey takes her, she'll meet people that are her adversaries as well as her friends along the way. And sometimes by navigating that, you just have to go through it. You know what I mean? So like when I started this podcast, me personally, and I don't want to overtalk you, I'm a geek. right? So like, when you're in those places that are not geeks, like the conversation doesn't go very far, right? But then when you get on this podcast, you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. I get to talk to no disrespect, the nerds all day.
Yeah, no disrespect taken.
Yeah. And shout out to my geeks who I've interviewed. So, how do you, in this era of AI, I have to ask this, how does that affect book writing, playwriting, screenwriting? Now anybody can quote unquote do it. And I mean that respectfully.
Yeah. There's two answers to that. On the one hand, it, just as you said, it makes it so that anyone can, in 10 seconds put a prompt into something and end up with, I haven't played with it, so I don't know how complete they are, but I assume that you can put a, 10-second prompt and end up with a whole play, or even a book.
Right.
I assume that takes a little longer to load or something, but I don't know.
But it could be from 0 pages to 150, whether the quality is up to snuff or not, it can complete something, right?
Exactly. Where I think AI just can't do anything is when it comes to what we were talking about, where we have certain stories in us that we have to write in a particular way, or it's just not going to be us.
Right.
And I think what AI is dangerous for is people who make their living off of art.
I was curious about that. I really was.
Yeah, because what it does is, especially without the guidelines that currently don't exist, it's basically, it's stealing people's work in order to replicate it in different ways, without compensating them, and then allowing different art to take place that in theory people could pay for instead of paying. So it's all very messy and not good in that sense. As far as human art and humanity's future as artists, I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere. I think it's just too much who we are, and there's enough of a backlash to AI that people are going in another direction, and whether or not businesses respect that, I don't trust them enough to say that they will. But somehow
there's a middle ground. I think there's a middle ground. I think, and this is just my 2 cents, I think it could be a great editing tool if you're looking to expand a particular scene of something that, particularly in the arts, right? So let's say you have this really great scene and you've been struggling, like, man, I'm trying to navigate how this wording is. Okay, maybe AI, and you're like, okay, that's how I wanted to word it, right? Like, it's no different than from somebody had a pen versus a typewriter. Like, man, I could just speed up this particular thing or spell check. So, or they recommended if you type an email and then it words it in a certain way, this is what I meant, but I couldn't word it in the proper context. And then I think you hit the nail on the head though, right? So people don't want to see, sometimes when things entertain us, we don't think of it as theft when we actually duplicate it, right? Like nobody's going to go out and mimic a Microsoft platform because because they're like, oh, that's proprietary software. But sometimes when something entertains you, you think you have a right to it, and the person doesn't have the right to be compensated for their work. It's really strange how that works.
Yeah, and it's tricky because there is a strong history of again, not exact replication, but of taking inspiration from other artists and putting your twist on it, and that is perfectly fair use and celebrated art.
Yeah.
And
stealing is different.
Stealing is different.
Stealing is different.
And with AI, there's a particular type of disrespect, I think, in
I respect that.
in it saying that
what you did didn't matter. All that work you did didn't matter, right? And like I kind of get where you're going, because you're like, you get, because it's a two-way street, and I don't want to get, I don't want to derail the topic, but for people who want to get into particular things, they're like, man, I really like, okay, it may help in that creative output. They can say, hey man, my schedule's full. I want to toy around with this because maybe it'll get me, to be the next Addam Ledamyen, right? But there's nothing that's going to replicate walking in that forest, seeing the outdoors, walking that trail, reading Dracula, and then really putting your stamp on things. And then the reason you got the reception from your audiences is because you put that work in. Yeah,
and I think there's something to be said about, if someone is struggling with how to phrase a sentence or something like that, there's two ways you can go about resolving that. You can, nowadays, you can ask AI to work on it for you or with you, but, or you can take the harder route, which is, reading or asking someone for help. And while that absolutely takes longer, and if you have social anxiety or something, that's scary, But it's the difference between isolation and community. And computers just can't provide that community no matter how fast they think. And so I think just on a ethical level, I think it's worth it to take the harder route to say, like, no, we're making art because we want to connect with people, and that should be present in how we make that art as well.
You're a playwright and an actor, and I'm sure you've done stage work. There's nothing AI can do to replicate that performance on stage.
Exactly.
There's nobody that can chat GPT when you have to get on there and you have to have the actor in front of you. And maybe, somebody's fumbling with a line, like, there's no chat box that's going to save you on stage, so to speak, right?
And that's the beauty of it, that's why that's why an amazing performance is amazing, is because we know it could have been less if those people had practiced less or had been less trained. But we respect art because of how much work went into it. And if we take that level of it out, it can still be entertaining, but what exactly are we doing with it?
Right. And then, it's also, with all respect to AI, like, when you see screenwriter credit, that person had sheets of paper or their typewriter, and then they kept, making this 3-dimensional character like you do, like the other future writers will, and then, at some point the bill's going to come due because maybe you just submitted a draft and you never really looked at it, your AI draft. You're like, hey, man, I can clearly tell a computer typed this out because this character is just kind of like hi, bye, so to speak, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So, again, like I said, I don't want to derail the conversation. Where can people find Addam Ledamyen, the story of the Legend of Leanna Page, and all of the wonderful things that you are doing and will continue to do?
Yeah, the main place to connect is at For Elenvia's website, at the publisher's website, forelenvia.org. So that's FORELENVIA.org. And that is where you can see the Legend of Leanna Page is available to be bought on any of the various online retailers. So, bookshop.org if you want to support your indies, or Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any of them. So that is there. Go buy the book. That's fun. And then the other things that you can find on forelenvia.org, in addition to and any of the emails as the artistic director, and any of those emails on the website or the contact forms, you're going to access me, so you can contact me there. But we're also, as we're talking about, ways of making this art in community and things like that. That's what For Elenvia wants to do. Our first work is publishing my book. But our intention is to publish all sorts of people's work. Beautiful. We are, as For Elenvia Publications and Productions, we're part literary publishing company and part theater production company. So we want to produce plays and publish books, all of which the intention is to create new stories that can help us imagine a better world. What I was speaking before about, believing that, humanity can do better in order to really give us a chance at doing so, that's what we want to use stories to try and do, to flip the narrative a little bit away from the dystopian trend that we're more used to nowadays, and think of, what could we do to be better, and using our fictional works to advance that particular thought, and doing that in and as large a community as we can is really our goal. So forelenvia.org, you can join that journey.
Have you ever seen Pan's Labyrinth?
I don't. I think I'm confusing it with Labyrinth, which is different. So I've heard of it a lot.
Yeah, so when you get a chance, when you talk about like a young lady who's transporting herself, I haven't watched the movie in a very, very long time, but I remember how much it stuck out to me. It was directed by Guillermo del Toro, the Mexican director, who's also done some wonderful work since he first came out back in the mid-'90s. But get a chance to watch Pan's Labyrinth, and I think that you'll find an appreciation of that story. It's basically like an adult Alice in Wonderland kind of book.
Oh,
right?
wonderful.
It was crazy, and it was Spanish, but you don't care if something's subtitled when it's beautiful, right? It really, you're like, in fact, you pay attention more because, I don't speak Spanish, so I really need to be focused. I can't go grab the dishes or, anything else. I got to be laser focused on this. So I think that would be a very good movie for you to watch based on the fantasy novel and the world that you're creating. And I see an Apple TV series out of this, so, I could see Leanna Page definitely doing some damage when it comes to an audience that resonates. And I'm looking forward to you reaching the highest heights of your career.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you deserve it. And this is Addam Ledamyen. I probably butchered that for the third time. on the Randomness of Nothing podcast. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Please make sure you subscribe. Also, check out his book and all the wonderful works that he's doing and will continue to do.
Thank you so much, Rashad.
This has been an honor and a pleasure, man. I'm even picturing this place in my mind while you're talking to me right now, and it's playing out well. I hope you get a copy of the book.
Thank you. I can absolutely send you one.
Thank you, man.
Picture this. The power goes out, your phone's at 50%, and suddenly your home is cold, dark, and you can't cook a thing. Oh, and it's the middle of winter. It's freezing. Cold air creeping in, and you, wrapped in blankets, hoping the heat kicks back on. Well, not anymore. Meet the new Patriot Power Generator 2200X from 4Patriots, our biggest solar generator ever, built to keep your essentials running through winter storms, rolling blackouts, ice outages, whatever hits next. It turns on automatically when the power goes out, can run a full-size fridge for up to 3 days, and arrives fully charged, so you're ready the moment the lights go out. And right now, for the first time ever, you'll get a free 200-watt solar panel. And once this batch is gone, it's gone. Visit 4patriots.com. That's the number 4patriots.com and claim your 2200X solar generator and free 200-watt solar panel while this holiday offer lasts.